of Tishman Spire, and our newly minted first deputy mayor, Maria Torres-Springer. And then we're going to get an update from CUNY, from the chancellor, Bela Rodriguez, and then and Ken Adams from LaGuardia is going to join us too. Then we'll have quick committee updates. And then we're going to transition from the Workforce Development Council meeting to the Workforce Development Board meeting. And we'll take a 5-minute break at that point. And with that, I'm going to introduce Rob.
Thank you, Abigail. Good morning, everyone. Public service is something extraordinarily important to keep our city functional, and people who dedicate their lives to public service, that's something super special. And whether it was at SBS, EDC, City Hall, Maria Torres-Springer has made a big impact at every stop along the way. And I'm super grateful that you've taken on this new role, and you're going to keep our city functional and thriving and stable. And you're going to do a great job. I know every person in this room is committed to supporting you. So thank you. One of the first deputy mayor's critical goals in every role she's played in government has been creating a more inclusive economy in our city. And that's also what inspires all of us to be here today. And since our meeting in April, we've created clear goals. We've spun up committees to address those goals. And now we're on our way to implementing some very impactful, specific plans across the city. And I know our committee heads are going to be briefing you all on that work. And I want to thank them and thank all of you for being part of this mission. It's more important than ever. We just got to keep our heads down and keep working. And with that, I want to introduce our first Deputy Mayor, Maria Torres-Springer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Rob. One of my first calls or pre-calls, I have to say, before it was announced, was to Rob, given his extraordinary leadership in the city on this board. And because I know that there are many incredible New Yorkers who we're all partners on this same mission. Despite what might be hard these days across the city, nationally, there are New Yorkers who are so committed to make sure that we continue not just a proper functioning of government, but that we continue to take great leaps forward as a city. And so a couple of you have heard this in recent days, but what has been happening in our city has really forced me to reflect on what public service is. And as I've been thinking about it, the thing that resonates with me is that public service ultimately is an act of love. It's an act of love for our city and for the people who make it great. And when we do our best work, that love is actually unconditional love, where we don't ask, what does this mean for my schedule or my sleep, or what happens at the end of this? You just serve and love your city unconditionally. And so that is what I am trying to do, because I know no other way. And so every time I've come into a role, I am always reminded of what a mentor of mine said, that in any role, you only have 2 good days, the first day and the last day. Because after all that, and my phone was blowing up, a lot of love and support, then it's like, okay, back to work, right? And so being here with all of you for this convening is exactly that, because we have no time to waste in terms of what we need to do to ensure that we have an inclusive economy and an inclusive city. And so I'm thankful for each and every one of you, not just for being on this council and the work in the intervening weeks and months since we last met in subcommittees, but for the continued energy. Because I hear from a lot of you outside of these meetings about the work, new ideas, and I encourage that to continue, because that's the only way that we are going to take what was the vision and promise of re-energizing this particular body and making sure that we take it from vision and aspiration to actual reality that improves the lives of New Yorkers. So that continues to be the goal. And the mayor's been very clear with me that my job is to tune out all the noise and to make sure that we're continuing to partner with the incredible constellation of leaders like who are in this room to keep moving the city forward. And so there is both a lot of great news and a lot of work to do. We have, of course, regained the more than 1 million jobs that we lost during the pandemic. We have an all-time high labor force participation rate. But we know, and we've talked about this before, that we've been squarely focused on making sure that any gains in our economy also start bridging the gap, collapsing the gaps that still exist across different communities, different race and ethnicity groups. And so that has always been the focus. And, you know, a lot of good news there too. We're moving in the right direction. A decrease in the unemployment rates for Black and Brown communities by nearly 30% since the administration took office. And so that is a testament to so much work inside and outside of government. And one of the ways that we want to make sure that we are intentional in continuing to address that gap is the work that we have done through an initiative called Jobs NYC. So we launched this several months ago. It was admittedly a sprint to see what would it mean if we brought all of our services on the ground and met New Yorkers where they were, in particular in neighborhoods with chronically high unemployment. And so during this sprint, more than 25 hiring halls. We've been able to serve 8,500 attendees, thousands of on-site interviews, and close to 1,000 conditional job offers on the spot. And so that was a sprint. What I'm happy to share is that given both what we've learned and the tremendous success due to the partnership between government, public servants, and employers who really raised their hands and stepped up, we are now embedding that into just the general work of the agencies. And so with much thanks to Commissioner Gross. By the way, since we last met, we also appointed a new SBS commissioner, the amazing Dinah Shaw Gross. So again, a round of applause for Dinah Shaw. Working very closely, of course, with Abby Jo Siegel in the Office of Talent and Workforce and all of our partner agencies. So Jobs NYC, a great start and a lot more to do. I can never leave a room without talking about how our work in economic development and workforce development is not complete if we don't also confront housing affordability. And so we are in a really important stage in our work in this administration to reach our moonshot goal of 500,000 new homes over the course of the next decade. We have, in the last couple of years, through the work of the housing agencies, broken back-to-back records in terms of financing new homes, in particular homes for the formerly homeless, supportive homes, getting individuals into permanent housing from shelters. That has been really fantastic work, but it's not enough. And so in about 56 days, the City Council will be voting on the City of Yes for housing opportunity, which we really believe is going to be one of the defining tasks of this generation of public servants, both on the executive side and, of course, on the City Council. And the goal there has always been pretty simple. Just a little bit of housing in every neighborhood, the cumulative effect of which will help us really make a dent in terms of our housing crisis. And so in your travels, with all of the many hats that you wear, your advocacy and support of City of Yes for housing opportunity will be so critical. Our goal here isn't to get past the kind of least common denominator of proposals. We want to make sure that the set of proposals that we have been engaging New Yorkers on, that stays whole, so that we have more tools to confront our housing crisis. Okay, that was housing. Now just two more things, back to talent. So Jobs NYC, a huge effort over the course of the last several months, but we have also been very energetic in implementing a new tool that we got with a lot of people's help from Albany in terms of our community hiring legislation, and now a full-on strategy. We just published rules that will enable us to have an operational framework for the community hiring program. And I want to thank the team and Office of Talent and Workforce Development for really moving very, very quickly on our community hiring goals. October is also National Disability Empowerment Month. And so that work too has been moving forward with great energy. Last year, as part of our work, Abby and many colleagues across government really took to heart what it meant, not just to improve our system in general, but in particular for individuals and New Yorkers with disabilities. And so I'm really excited that work, especially this month, continues to move rapidly. Last thing in terms of advocacy. So many in this room probably know that we are, of course, we benefit from WIOA dollars from the federal government. Legislation was authorized. There are some challenges in that bill, challenges that undermine flexibility that is needed in order to deploy those dollars, which aren't always the easiest dollars to deploy in the first place. And so we're going to keep you posted on that. We're tracking it. And again, your advocacy there and support, I think, will ensure that those important resources continue to be the types of resources that we can use in service of New Yorkers. Okay, I think that was everything. But now I want to turn over to two incredible colleagues who have been such champions for New Yorkers, for different communities, and for this change that we really wanted to see in this administration that has been elusive for a very long time. And that's the connecting the different institutions, higher ed, the public schools, and our workforce system in a way where we are partners in the same mission. This, I think, has been one of the untold stories of the admin, but I have no doubt it will be one of the enduring legacies of our work together. And so with that, I'm so humbled to introduce our amazing CUNY Chancellor, Felix Matos Rodriguez.
Destroying everything up here. So thank you, First Deputy Mayor Torres Springer. Thank you for saying yes to the dress, and also we love you back. So and we wish you the best of luck in your. And why don't we give another big round of applause? At CUNY, we take the role of connecting the success of our students very, very seriously, and we've been doing it for 175 years since the founding of the Free Academy. Again, a few things. I know this audience is familiar with our campuses and the system, but a couple of things that I want to make sure that we all have in our mind. We have about 1 million alumni who graduated from our 25 campuses, and 80% of them stay here in New York City. And I have to brag that among many of those alumni, we have 13 Nobel Peace Prizes, a whole number of MacArthur Genius Awards. So great talent that really also represents New York City in a way that no other institution in the city really does. 75% of our students are students of color, and they sort of mirror the demographics of our city. Speak about 100 languages, talk about assets that are reinvested back in our communities. And 82% of all our incoming freshmen graduate from the New York City public schools, which is one reason we've been working very closely with them over the past year. Because I think actually from a public policy perspective, we are one of the few places in the nation that has one large single public school system and one large single higher ed system, allowing for a lot more integration and coordination. And our students, 50% of them come from households that earn less than $30,000 a year in their families. 60% of them are the first one in their families to go to college, right? And even with all those challenges on the financial end, when they start, we're very, very proud that 75% of them attend college basically tuition free with the support of our state dollars and our federal dollars. And 75% of them graduate debt free. No other college president, campus leader in the US can stand in front of a group and say that 75% of their students graduate debt free. Right? And that's an important step for them to be able to buy homes, do all the things that have an impact on our economy. We have about 235,000 students on our degree seeking side, but I also want to accentuate, because it's key to the work that we do here, that we have another about the same number, 220,000 students who are enrolled in non-degree programs. And those are many of the programs that connect here with accelerated workforce training, ESL courses, learning language, some of the key building blocks for us to be able to do the work that we want. And when all those students succeed, when all those students advance, getting a first job that has high potential and a family sustaining career, the entire New York City and all of us succeed. What we know also, right, is that those students have all the talent, all the brightness, all the grit that everybody here has. What they don't have is the networks that some of the students from other schools, mostly private, bring into the equation. The social capital that opens doors for them more easily into the workforce. And that's why our campuses must be the inspiration, the roadmap, creating the proactive connections to the careers that those students want, to the connections to the employers that want that talent and that our city depends on. And so that's why since day one, I became chancellor, making that career engagement work has been central to the work in my administration. And it's a signal to in the leadership that I've been able to sort of tap into, like great presidents like Ken Adams at LaGuardia. We're building that muscle of thinking about careers from day one entirely into the system. And we want to elevate that. We've been elevating that even though we began my tenure with the pandemic and, not the most auspicious of circumstances, but that's been something that we've been investing. And we are putting that transformation to happen in every one of our campuses. Let me give you an example of some of the things that we've done out there to begin that transformation. All right. Any of you who has heard me before, and probably in 2 languages, knows about the commitment to paid internships, right? And we know that those initiatives like CUNY 2X Tech, which has been supported by the city, that those students who participate in paid internships have 3 times are more likely to get a job offer immediately after graduation. So they stay on track, they graduate, they do that. When they go out there to the workforce, they get hired faster and their first time pay is higher. We've also worked very hard to have integrated advising. We know the students who engage with an integrated academic and career advisor, thinking about your career. Many campuses do the career thing fairly well, the academic part fairly well. The career and the advisement, we're working very closely to make that. And we know through our work in the CUNY Inclusive Economy, which is funded by the city, that those students who have those advisors also, again, When they go out there to get jobs, they're 3 times more likely to get a job faster after graduation. Their first time pay goes up. It helps with the retention. And they're also more likely to have a job that is connected to their degree, which is very important to us. You put a lot of time and energy into studying for a career. We want you to go out there and have a job that's connected with what you study. The whole route of exploration and exposure. We know that departments that have degree maps that not only show the courses, but also the career milestones needed for specific career path. We know that those students, when they go out there, we see their graduate salaries rise by 34%, increase in the growth of paid internships, and again, employment after graduation. Now what we're saying is not the usual thing that if you're doing psychology, you do psychology 101 in the fall and then psychology 102. No, we want to do that, but we want to tell you that you need to be thinking about getting ready for an internship. And to do that, you need to think about these courses here. You have to apply to handshakes, so you have openness to all the things that we have. So we are giving you a map, not just to your major, but also about your career. You're thinking about what you need to do so that you're not senior year and junior year. Oh my God, I needed to be thinking about this because I want to participate in an internship and you're behind everybody else. So we're doing that from job one. We've been doing all these things with support from the city and the philanthropic sector. And now we want to do that at scale. The moment has come. We have tried this in all the campuses. We've seen the success. We've seen faculty, staff, everybody buying into this. It is the time to do it at scale. The entire higher ed industry is trying to figure this out. New York can lead, and no better place to lead at scale than the City University of New York. So the pillars of this work are expanding exploration and exposure early, growing, integrating advising, scaling career-connected learning, embedding paid work-based learning into our degree path, and proactively working with all our employers. This is mission one for my administration. Many of you have been partners in this road, and we're ready to take it at scale. And when I talk about this, sometimes the look that I get is, fellow, coño, come on. CUNY's big, right? This is big time change, right? We're ready. This is a university that in 1 week, when the pandemic hit, switched 50,000 courses in person to online. This is a university that by the end of the semester is going to be leading higher ed, something that many of you think, well, that should have been a no-brainer many, many years ago. Our transfer, right, we're a system. Students who transfer from community college to 4 years, losing credits, losing money, losing time. By the end of this year, we're going to be the first higher ed system that is fully integrated, not forced by the legislation, not forced by outside forces, done internally with our faculty and our work. So we are ready for this challenge on the career side. We need the support of the city. We need the support of the state. We need the support of philanthropy so we can all row in the same direction on behalf of our students. And one of the greatest examples of people rowing in the same direction is some of the amazing people that I get to name as president of campus. And we have now, one of our presidents has been a champion in this space, somebody who is probably rowing 3 times as fast as anybody else, was an example of the transformation we want for the entire system, and we will achieve it with your support. It gives me great pleasure to introduce someone. At the end, we might share the story about when I called him to tell him he was getting the job, right? In which he was convinced that I was calling to tell him he was not getting the job, right? And I said, no, chancellors call to tell people they got the job. Somebody else called to let them know they did it. So with that note, it gives me great pleasure to do it by friend and a great leader, Ken Adams of LaGuardia Community College.
How time flies. I forgot about that call. Good morning, everybody. Sound check. Rachel and Paula, can you hear us in the back? Good. it's not easy to come up here and follow your boss, especially it just reminded me about hiring me and all that. And I'm grateful to him every day for having made that crazy decision. But one thing, and I guess it's the part of the reason I'm here, is that one of Phalo's great attributes, and the other 24 college presidents and deans in CUNY will say this about Phalo, is that he loves all of his children equally, and they're all above average. And he leads the whole system, obviously, and gave you a great overview of what's going on in CUNY, especially in the things we care about here with respect to workforce development. But I get to stand before you with a certain bias towards our 7 community colleges. I get to pick some friends here for my presentation. Our 7 community colleges and their role in workforce development in the city. And then, why not? I'm here. Thank you, Abby Jo Siegel, for inviting me, and Michelle Adams for poking and making sure I was invited, and everybody else. I get to really be biased and tell you about LaGuardia, because that's my #1 school in the CUNY system. No surprise. So very quickly, a little bit about where we are in the community college system generally, some specifics about LaGuardia, and finally some examples at LaGuardia of what the chancellor was just talking about. New initiatives, thanks to city support, around really positioning career success as the ultimate goal of CUNY for our students. So let's go to let's take a look. Phalo mentioned this, but as a result of the pandemic, community college enrollment was just hammered. Our enrollment dropped like a rock. We lost 1/3 of our students 2021. And we're on the way to rebuilding. There are 1,200 community colleges in the country. This is not unique to New York. All community colleges lost a lot of students. Everyone's struggling to rebuild their enrollment. Fall 23 data is pretty solid. Fall 24, where we are now, numbers are still coming in, so we could get to that in about a month. But there are about 75,000 students, again, a year ago, enrolled in the 7 community colleges out of the 230 or so thousand students that Phalo mentioned. Still, that's about a 20% drop of where it was in the fall of 18. CUNY enrollment was really surging in 2017, 18. It began a decline, honestly, before the pandemic because of demographics. We know that we have far fewer high school students in the K through 12 or in the high school system now, and we're seeing that. That's the demographic changes in the city are coming through CUNY. But the split's important here for the community colleges. About 55,000 students seeking 60 credit associate degrees, almost all of them aspiring to transfer to a senior college, as the chancellor pointed out. But the non-degree student population is really, for this discussion, these are people who see our community colleges as places for job training, for adult basic skills, for ESL. This is really the engine of CUNY with respect to workforce development and employer partnerships. You see a list of the credentials that are typical, the activities that happen. Let's go to the next slide, thanks, at community colleges. Now, at a glance, just again, putting up a slide here focused on my favorite community college. We're in Long Island City, Queens, where the sun always shines and our students are always happy. This is recent data from fall 24. The semester for us started in early September, just about a month ago. Our enrollment at LaGuardia, we're pleased to report, is up. It's actually closer to 9%. That's year over year. That's the second largest enrollment jump this fall in the whole CUNY system, except for, that community college I don't like to name that's over here on Chamber Street. My friend Tony beat us out by a couple of points, but yes, we are competitive, Sergeant Phil. But so this is a very healthy recovery, enrollment recovery at LaGuardia. ACE is an acronym for Adult and Continuing Education. This is a very big part of the business and kind of why I'm here today. Because LaGuardia is different in the sense that we're like a 50-50 school. We have about 13,000 students seeking associate degrees at LaGuardia, and another 12,000 who are in non-degree programs. Again, ESL, summer youth employment, workforce training, adult basic skills. So a total, just to give you a sense of scale, of about 25,000 students. No other CUNY school has that much workforce development. We're the largest provider of ESL or ESOL training in all of New York City. We do a lot of work, for example, had 1,000 asylum seekers at LaGuardia this summer for evening English classes. This costs us about $105 million a year. I will say, first deputy mayor is here. I know it wasn't your idea, but CUNY did suffer from budget cuts because of the city's budget problems. LaGuardia lost $8.8 million in our funding through the PEGs, or the Programs to Eliminate the Gap. 2 weeks ago, we got a very helpful restoration of some of that. So we're back on the road to recovering our city funding. Thank you very much. The first deputy mayor has nothing to do with the cut. She has everything to do with the restorations, with the good part. But anyway, this is just to give you a sense of scale. Now, we do a lot of fundraising at LaGuardia. We're 7th in the system for grants under management. These are city, state, and federal contracts. We work with 9 federal agencies, 21 different programs. Many of that are all workforce development programs. Not enough time to tell you about them today. And then on the foundation side, we also punch way above our weight. We've raised $25 million from individuals, New York City, mostly New York City-based people who care about what we do at LaGuardia. These are individual contributions. And actually, Rachel's on our board of the foundation sitting in the back here. And what we do with that money is unique because at CUNY, we give scholarships to plumbers. So our foundation supports or raises money to provide financial aid for people who want to learn English, for those asylum seekers I just mentioned, for non-citizens. We have a donor who's given us a commitment of $1.5 million specifically to help non-citizens that come to LaGuardia for education and training. So we use private dollars. You can literally come with very little English. You can come to LaGuardia, take our ESL programs, get to a level where you can go into a workforce program and get a scholarship to become an electrician. That's not, community colleges don't do that. And remember, and this is here for the WIB board meeting later on, think about this as a policy issue. There is no government financial aid for non-degree programming in this country, right? Pell and TAP, the sources of government-backed financial aid, are for degree-seeking students. The U.S. is sort of way behind in this idea. There's legislation pending in Washington for many, many years called short-term Pell or workforce Pell, which would enable a low-income student who qualifies for a Pell grant, $7,000 this year, to use a portion of the Pell Grant for a non-degree workforce training program. You would think we could do this already. That legislation stalls every year in Congress and we haven't done it yet. We really need to do that. Because otherwise we have to do this. We have to do private sector fundraising, philanthropic fundraising, simply to help people get workforce training programs because there is no government financial aid for low-income people who want job training. Let's go to the next slide. So examples to support what the chancellor was talking about, but just specific to LaGuardia. LaGuardia is a very big STEM school. We're actually the 3rd largest producer of STEM graduates in the CUNY system. I love saying this to people up at City College, to Vince and to others. And we're number 3 behind City College and City Tech in downtown Brooklyn, despite being a community college. We have almost 600 students in electrical, civil, and mechanical engineering programs, most of whom will transfer actually to City and to City Tech. But we're very big in STEM. And so it's not a surprise, these 3 initiatives that we have going link our students in computer science and engineering primarily, and math as well. But they link students in those programs to through employer partnerships, to internships, work-based learning, real exposure to the careers that come with those degrees. And so, for example, the NSF EASL program is actually brand new. This happened this summer. We're the only CUNY school in this National Science Foundation funded initiative, which involves 5 other SUNY schools, and is about it's geared to help students who are studying computer science prepare for careers in the semiconductor industry. Now, the first deputy mayor will remind me that New York City is hardly the hub of the semiconductor industry. No, but Clay, New York will be with the $5 billion investment Governor Hochul made into the Micron plant that's being built outside of Syracuse right now. So we had a LaGuardia student this summer, students at Global Foundries in Malta, New York, interning in a clean room of a chip fab as they prepare to work in the semiconductor industry. Those jobs are upstate, but there's a huge workforce shortage of trained workers, even coming from the SUNY system. So LaGuardia stepped up and we're part of this federal grant to do that. CUNY Inclusive Economy, take a red pen, write a big circle around that. One of the most important things that we're doing in CUNY, thanks to the Adams administration, Abby Jo and her colleagues who've lobbied for this. Very simple idea. For most of you in this room, this doesn't seem like Chancellor said it before. It seems so basic, and we weren't doing this before. We've got to find ways to connect our CUNY, in this case, STEM faculty, to employers, to partners in industry to help keep the curriculum current and to help make sure our faculty are teaching our students the requirements and competencies for jobs today, right? And so what happens here in this program is that city funding enabled us to hire industry experts from the semiconductor industry. Actually, I'm sorry, this isn't a computer science program. And also we also do it with our engineering students. But they are basically tech industry experts who report to the department chair and are embedded in the department, come to work every day. One is a woman named Talia Barzell, who's fantastic. And they work side by side with our faculty at LaGuardia on the curriculum, on the programs, on internships, and on the employer partnerships, so that those faculty members have real partners in industry to keep that curriculum aligned with industry needs. It's working incredibly well. And we have a number of great internships as a result of that. I should point out, it's not on this slide, but we're an active participant in the New York Job CEO Council. And so we have an apprenticeship program with Wells Fargo in cybersecurity, a similar program in data analytics with MasterCard, and a lot of work that we're doing with a very important member of the CEO Jobs Council, Northwell Health. So the Chancellor mentioned CUNY 2X Tech and the Tech Talent Pipeline, the residency program. These are internship programs. So again, this might seem obvious, but what happens specifically is the funding enables us to put someone in between the classroom faculty and the employer over here, bridging that gap, bringing them closer together and providing amazing experiences for our students. Let's go to the last slide, kind of wrap this up. We're supposed to have a little time for Q&A. One of the things we try to do, and this is part of the model that the Chancellor is pushing us all towards, we call it kind of a one college design. We've got to have students move freely between a degree program and non-degree workforce training, and at the same time have students who are taking just a certificate program or workforce training program, transition into degree programs, move kind of back and forth in the college, right? And then faculty do that, industry partnerships do that, our outside industry experts do that. It's all one college, is like what we want to say. So for example, in our workforce development division, the ACE division I referred to earlier, these are 3 typical healthcare programs. Did I mention we're also big in healthcare? Cover the Chancellor's ears, but we have the #1 nursing program, associate degree nursing program in New York State for about 4 years running now, just based on the NCLEX, the licensing pass rates. So we're #1 in nursing. Did I mention that? And we're the only vet tech program in all of New York City. And thank you, ASPCA. We have some unique health sciences programs. But these programs are not degrees. These programs take typically about 6 months. They're non-degree workforce training programs designed by the industry partner. Right? So during the pandemic, some of you may know this, but our hospital system across the city lost a lot of people in this particular field, central service techs. Central service technicians are also called sterilization technicians. It's a very specific job in an operating room where, you guessed it, you are sterilizing and maintaining the instruments and passing them to the surgeon. For whatever reason, that's a high-stress job, and people left. So employers came to us and said, can you train central service? And we said, sure. Tell us exactly what the training has to look like. What do we need to do? We do this with Northwell and other employers. So we design a training that's very specific to the employer needs. And this, again, it's a 6-month program, very serious internship. It's really hard. Actually, I know someone who's done it. But the students get hired before they're done with the internship because the employer designed it. And they get to know them, see them on the job. It's pretty simple. But what happened is we look at these programs, and then our staff, we kind of walk over to the academic department. In this case, a guy named Phil Gimbert, the chair of our health sciences department, and he looks at what we're teaching in this workforce training program and does an evaluation for how much credit can we give these students. So this is mental health peer specialists. These are people with prior diagnosis of a mental health condition. We use their lived experience. We give them training so they can then go out and counsel and help people who are undergoing treatment for some mental health issue. And it's 12 credits. Why? Because we equated this to our social work. It's called Human Services program. And the equivalency turned out that there were 3 courses that you need to take to get the associate's degree. But what was being taught in those 3 courses was the equivalent to what was being taught in the workforce training program. So each one of these is a credit-bearing workforce training program. Again, we could go in both directions. A workforce student earns this credit. We give you an IOU. You go on, you work. The internship turns into a job. You work, you put food on the table. You come back and want to get your degree. Now it's not 60 credits. It's maybe 48 because we're giving you the 12 through that IOU. All of these work this way. They're called stackable credentials. It's a way of taking workforce training, putting it in a bite-sized manageable piece for somebody, 6 months, not 6 years, getting them out into the workforce, getting them exposure to the job, and then they can come back and get the degree and ultimately transfer and get the baccalaureate degree. I think that's it. You got any more slides?
Is he hired?
Oh, I knew there was one more. Okay, one more, but I'm sure I suspect I'm running out of time. This is a summary. This is a summary of what the chancellor was talking about, that we're driving through the whole CUNY system. It's the stuff that matters, particularly this idea of a culture shift. I mean, again, I'll say this at a certain peril to my employment, but CUNY has a very powerful academic mission, and the culture shift is embracing the academic mission and building into it a focus on career success as student success. Getting faculty to understand that students don't come for a credential. They don't come for a degree. They come for education and training to get a job so they can put food on the table and money in their pocket. That's why we know that. And it's to get faculty to see success as the student in a living wage job, providing for his or for their family, right? So that's what working with one college model. The rest of this is sort of a little bit of inside baseball, the things we have to do to get there. And with the chancellor's leadership and with the support, thank you so much to everybody here, and of course the first deputy mayor from the city for these very specific initiatives that are enabling us to bridge the gap between New York City employers and CUNY faculty. It's happening. Thanks very much.
Talk about the Mets.
Fifth grade indoor, bottom of the sixth.
Largest gift.
Oh, because I don't talk about it that much.
Yes.
It's true. No, left out of the LaGuardia slide, thank you, Chancellor, for poking me about this. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, because it is down the road, I'll be back, I think. If you invite me back, I'd be able to talk about this when we have it done. But, among the various forms of support we've secured for LaGuardia in the last couple of years, probably definitely the biggest thing that's happened, the biggest gift is a $116,000 gift from Stephen and Alex Cohen. What did I say? Oh, add 3 zeros. So yeah, we got in April a $116 million gift from the Stephen Alexander Cohen Foundation. It's really a project of Alex Cohen, who is absolutely committed to workforce education and vocational training, to build 160,000 square foot, state-of-the-art, largest in the region, if not the country, vocational training facility at LaGuardia in a building we already own and control. And so that will be, we believe, transformational for LaGuardia, for CUNY, and for the city. So many of the things we're talking about here will be expanded, and then we'll add a lot more to it, because we will have this incredible new facility construction on which should start next year. So thank you for preventing me from leaving without mentioning the Cohen Career Collective, as it's called. So that's coming down the pike as well. Thank you.
Paula, where's the Steinbrenner Center going to be?
My cousin Kenneth is a tough act to follow, but thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I too want to echo the sentiments this morning for you, Maria. You are an amazing woman, an amazing mother, an amazing friend, and you're going to really help lead the city. So thank you for everything. So I am the fortunate chair of the communications committee for our wonderful group. And I want to particularly thank Eva Benson from Rubenstein, who's helped us so much today. And I want to thank Stephen Rubenstein for allowing us to work with Eva. So thank you, Stephen. And just so everybody is aware, our staff person is Chris. Chris, can you raise your hand? And Matt Beller, who's been critical in doing this. So on page 14 of your books, what we're trying to do is put together a communication toolkit for all of the committees, because there's such terrific work happening within each of the work streams that we wanted a collective place, a repository of good news. So the good news can come from 2 directions. One is from the work you're doing in your own committees, and then 2 is the fabulous work that you're doing in your own companies, your non-for-profits, your labor unions, your universities. We want to hear what you're doing. And moreover, we want to be able to let the world know what you're doing. So this toolkit is a really terrific place for us to aggregate the good news and then to be able to push it out publicly. That then helps us engage the second step, which will be, mainstream media, to let them know about the wins that this group is having, the wins that the Adams administration is having in this critical work. So our toolkit is a work in progress. You're gonna see the beginnings of it. We are working very hard on the structure and apparatus to which you will be able to receive the information in your Instagram posts and pictures digitally. So we're going to come back to you with more information. And as a follow-up from this meeting, we're going to be reaching out to each of you and your organizations to make sure we have your communications person, on speed dial, so we can do a tutorial for them. That should be helpful. I want to take a quick poll. We're going to try to push out this information if we can, either on Talent Tuesdays, kind of like Taco Tuesday, or Workforce Wednesday. So a show of hands, do you like the word Talent Tuesday?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Workforce Wednesday. Oh yeah. Abigail, I told you it was going to be Wednesday. So we're gonna try to aim for Workforce Wednesdays. We're going to hopefully kick this off sometime in November with the ability to push the information out. This will be a work in progress, everyone. So, we're going to teach everybody how to, Instagram out and tweet and all the things that you do. But we're really looking forward to this, and we think this should be very helpful in the work we're doing day in and day out. So appreciate that. I think I'm turning it over to Adria next for the next committee. Great.
I have the mic here. Does this work?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to sit here at my desk, at my table. Good morning, everyone. And I'm going to give a brief update about the executive committee. Okay. So the executive committee acts on behalf of the full Workforce Development Board, and we oversee $100 million in the federal innovation and opportunity funding that comes to New York City. The executive committee is comprised only of board members, workforce development board members, and you can see the full list of committee members in the packet. The executive committee is responsible for monitoring program and fiscal performance, considering new and updated policies, and monitoring compliance under WIOA. And some of the recent activities that we have been involved in, we met early in September and addressed two important pieces of business. The committee considered and passed two resolutions related to the investment in training dollars under WIOA. The first resolution updated our policy on income eligibility to participate in WIOA funded training. The second resolution increased the maximum amount we are willing to pay for commercial driver training to be more in line with current market prices. And that went from $2,000 to $3,200 after some research into what the market what the pricing was out in the market. Both of these training resolutions will enable our system to invest training dollars more effectively and strategically to ensure more New Yorkers gain the skills they need for in-demand jobs, and more employers can find the qualified talent that they're seeking. Additionally, the Department of Youth and Community Development briefed the executive committee on the WIOA youth providers they selected through the competitive request for proposals for the RFP process. That was a really interesting and in-depth presentation that was done by DYCD. We got a lot of really good information and saw who the providers were that are going to be administering these programs. The information for that is now public, so everybody can see that. And we will provide additional details during the board meeting later this morning about these resolutions and the presentation from DYCD. And we can follow up in email with information for the rest of the members of the board and the council. Okay, so with that, I am turning it over to
Moi. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm Deegan Leopold. I'm Chief Partnerships Officer at the New York Jobs CEO Council and have the pleasure of working with many of you and co-chairing the Early Career Success Committee with my partner in crime, Meryl Pond of the Partnership for New York City. We, as a committee, I think we are the largest committee, as I saw on the background materials, but we are responsible for driving alignment, which is so critical across this ecosystem in which you all play such a huge part. We are beginning to have conversations about what do we mean by early career success. And so as we further define and drill down on that, we will confirm and share those resources with you. But we are focused on thinking out a career development framework. Many of your agencies are doing this work. And so we want to collect and understand everything that is happening in the name of career readiness and career development. We are going to focus on two deliverables, two main work streams. We are going to develop a taxonomy, fun word of the day, around everything that's happening, who's doing it, what's happening, what are the outcomes, what's the sequence of career readiness and development in place, and identify and lift up those great examples that are happening in the ecosystem. So many of you already do this, but again, we are going to collect it and see the full scope of what is happening across New York City. We are keen to think strategically about special populations that have different needs, specifically young students who graduate without a post-secondary plan or out of school, out of work youth. So please keep us posted on any things that are happening for those populations that we should keep top of mind as we develop this framework. And once we look at everything that's happening and identify great examples, we will talk with Matt's committee, who you'll hear from next, to think about common metrics across the city's ecosystem. We're also going to do the fun work of looking at all of the different task forces and industry commissions and councils and advisory boards that are happening across New York City. There are many. Some of them are duplicative. And so we would love to see the great work that's happening and see where we can recommend some consolidation for the greater good. So those are sort of our two big bodies of work that we will focus on. Stay tuned, and I'm really thrilled and honored to work with all of you.
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Matt Klein. I'm the Chief Program and Impact Officer at Robin Hood Foundation, and I chair the Data and Impact Committee. And the mission of our committee is essentially just to make the information available that exists more actionable, more helpful, more useful, and valuable to stakeholders across the workforce development system. So focusing in two areas. One is on labor market information, making that easier to digest and more available and accessible to folks wherever they sit in relationship to the workforce development system. And secondly is to continue to aggregate and build and integrate data from across the landscape of organizations and programs being funded with workforce related dollars. So to better understand, regardless of which agency dollars flow through, what organizations and programs exist, and then ultimately what are the outcomes of those different programs in a way that is digestible for stakeholders across the system. So lots of existing data already out there. So big part of this work is just making the data more usable and accessible. With that, I'll turn it over to Daniel.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Bustillo. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the 1199 SEIU Training and Employment Funds. I'm a member of the Expanding Apprenticeships Committee. Angie, who is our chair, unfortunately cannot be here today, so I'm stepping in. And our committee is really dedicated to advancing the utilization and effectiveness of apprenticeship programs across the city and achieving the moonshot goal of 30,000 apprenticeships by 2030. So at TEF, at our organization, the Training and Employment Funds, we've been doing apprenticeships since 2016. oftentimes in collaboration with LaGuardia on many of our programs as well. So we've had a great partnership with LaGuardia. And I think the committee, we view apprenticeship as definitely an options and opportunity multiplier, which provides individuals with really valuable earn and learn opportunities, hands-on training, mentorship, industry recognized credentials, and the opportunity for sustainable employment in good jobs. So what have we done as a committee? Since our first meeting, the committee has reviewed prior work to date, including the recent apprenticeship landscape report and New York City Talent threshold criteria. We're also working closely with the New York City Talent Apprenticeship Accelerator and the newly created Community of Practice, as well as other key partners, networks that are working to advance the same mission. What are the items that we're focused on? 2 items in particular. The first is our committee is really focused on the creation of a public awareness campaign about apprenticeships. So that does very nicely with the communications that we heard about up front. This campaign will be focused on educating a broad array of New York stakeholders and promoting the use of apprenticeships really as a tool for equitable economic development. And obviously, employers are critical and foundational to apprenticeships. We all know that. You cannot do an apprenticeship without an employer, but we will also focus on other key stakeholders such as unions, labor management training partnerships, schools, training providers, and community organizations. And we also are working, as I mentioned previously, with the New York City Talent Apprenticeship Accelerator to really better define for our second item of work, what technical assistance can and should look like to expand apprenticeships and to meet the moonshot goal of 30,000 apprentices by 2030. So this will include specific recommendations for each type of stakeholder that I ran through initially. And I thank you for your time. I will turn it over to our last speaker.
Hey everyone. Oh, does this work? Yeah, maybe that was better. Sorry. Yeah. There we go. Can you guys? No. Green the battery. Flashing. Flashing. All right, we're gonna try this one again. No worries. This one. It's fine. This is good. Thanks, everyone. I'm Alicia Steinman. I'm the managing partner for EY here in New York, and I'm the chair of the 5-Borough Future Work Committee. But first, I want to thank all my committee members. We spent a lot of time together sort of synthesizing this particular issue, which is also the broadest sort of mandate, but also a really, really important one. So thanks to all my committee members. Our committee is really tasked with 2 things. One, looking at the macroeconomic work trends here in the city and how they'll affect our labor market. And then how do we enable the city, give them strategies for adapting to those trends and getting ahead of those trends and really enabling us to support them as they work through those trends in the labor market. So we really focused on 3 different pillars, and I'll go through the first 2 and then my colleague will do the last one. One is remote hybrid. So we all live in the city. We all work in the city. We have seen since COVID the dramatic shift in how people work, where they work. If you look at the statistics, it's very interesting, and this is from Kathy, your partnership from New York. 60% of employers have a hybrid work arrangement. 34% have a combination of roles that are hybrid, remote, or in the office 5 days, depending on the work function. Only 5% of employers require daily attendance, 5%, and only 1% are fully remote. So what does that mean for the city and real estate, offices, all those things? So we looked at that. My office is in Manhattan West. We are very, very busy Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are the same. But how do we embrace that change? And one of the things that our committee looked at was, let's look at the positives from those, right? So I run in the park. Sometimes I run during the day. People are out, right? So you have the flexibility to do that. A lot of people have adapted their childcare, right? And enables the moms to the drop-offs or pick them up early. These are things that we should be embracing and championing. One of the other things we thought of was the other boroughs. We're not saying outer boroughs, we say other boroughs. I live in Harlem. Now you go out to lunch during the week where everyone used to be in Midtown Manhattan. Now, look at the mom and pop shops. Look at those restaurants. They're full all the time. So embracing those, supporting those, and really giving strategies and incentives to those businesses as we embrace this new normal, as we'll say. So that's the first area we're working on. And then the second one is the aging and changing demographics. So we heard from LaGuardia how many students are now doing workforce development, non-degrees, what skills are needed for the jobs, not now, 5 years, 10 years. How do we get to the schools now, working with the Jobs Council and really enabling those skills to be taught at a lower level earlier, so that way when people are graduating, now they're ready for employment. So how do we look at those skills? How do we get them sooner? And then the last one, which is probably on everyone's mind, is AI. So Fred, that's you.
Thank you, Alicia. Is this working? Good job. All right. Who here has heard of generative AI? Right? The news, yes. So as I'm honored to be part of this committee and helping around this generative AI challenge. I mean, I think, New York City should position itself as the Gen AI center, and for our workforce literacy, Gen AI literacy is going to be really important. Educating New Yorkers around generative AI literacy is critical to avoiding algorithmic biases, which I've heard quite a few times. The more we have the broader community of New Yorkers involved in generative AI literacy and its growth and its development in every piece of the workforce is going to be important. So, one of the things that I was excited to get involved with, which was putting together with Jobs Council, with this council, maybe you working with CUNY, working with many different companies, even work with the Workforce Development Committee in putting together a generative AI center of excellence for a broader, diverse community of New Yorkers that may not have access to that learning. One of the ideas was to really focus on how do we do this as a community to really scale. There's a lot of initiatives at Google, at Amazon, and other companies within CUNY's system, of course, that are obviously going to be looking at generative AI. But the idea here was to get together and work on a training literacy program that we all invest in once, make it the best possible, and also making sure it's focused on a certain persona that might not be getting that generative AI training in their own communities. So we're starting that pilot, excited to start that pilot in the next few months. And it is a lot of unknowns with generative AI, right? There's a lot of unknowns of what's going to really resonate with the right populations. But the idea was to try to just get something out there, see how it goes, and then continue to work as a community, companies, CUNY system, mayor's office, as one to really tackle the generative AI literacy opportunity, I'll say, that we have. So with that said, who has the video? Cue video. Technology.
So while we're waiting for the video to queue up, I just want to after this, we're going to do facilitated table conversations at your tables. And then after that, we'll have a brief break, and then we'll transition to the Workforce Development Board meeting. Hope everybody will stay. All right, are we good? We got it?
Yeah, we put this demo together in a couple of days, if not a few hours. One of the young, smart Gen AI people at EY did this, and just to try to show the power of generative AI and really get you guys a little bit excited about this breakout conversation and what this means. Even the voice is actually Gen AI created. That was not somebody even reading a script. So shall we break into breakout?
Yeah, so please, everybody, we're going to do facilitated conversations at your tables. There's somebody from the committee at your table who will be facilitating it. And we are also taking notes. And we really want your input and feedback to help inform the Generative AI Center and as well as all the work that we're doing. We'll come back together briefly at the end, and then we'll wrap up the council meeting and move to the board meeting. Thank you.
No, I love these. I went for
Oh, wait, yes.
No, I'm sorry. No, I told her I nor my voice is so that's back box video. You know when having a center where they share
Even a mic. We're still spending the day. I had an AI person session.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a woman,
And I'm sure it's.
it was a consultant. I'll give you the name. It's very interesting. That's probably that. It's a line of work.
First, work.
to look at like what's happening. What's happening. A lot of the things around AI is I didn't actually first. Because I've got 15,000 people in my office that want to. What I think the Guardian is I think that what jobs do you think about that emerging from leveraging AI?
Part of it, partially, but also.
And then it was trying to think, stuff your team is doing is obviously like very And this was already that.
So I'll try to stay on public schools. Yeah, I mean, I will say. Yeah.
I didn't fact check that. I should have.
You said it was an AI voice.
Okay, but yeah.
There's 60 kids out there.
When I get back over here.
What am I doing? At least when I was talking, you want to put a bigger version. Big companies, they have people building these things. They can use to win the resources.
Yeah, I get it. Like, really, I think it's great that it keeps.
In response to the idea.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
Right.
And I was going to do that. Or say, just like,
Yeah, I've got our trainer. So you need it. Yes, we've got them in today.
That's sort of what is the next train on that where you can sort of say you know, gee, I want to. How do I get trained? Okay, so how does it back? And everything. My prediction is this level 20 are going to be taken to that. It's going to be.
This is your 1.5 minute warning.
This guy didn't fall.
That's my direction.
Yeah, one other thing I was thinking about too is like maybe.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up the table. Say your last words. So I know we could spend the rest of the day talking about generative AI and still not have figured it out, but really appreciate everybody's thoughts on it. We will continue to think about this in the context of our work collectively. So thank you to all the committees for the reports out, and particular thanks to the 5-borough Future of Work Committee for the session. We're gonna wrap up now. Just want to highlight that there's a couple of other items in your folders that I want to make sure you're looking at. There's a more detailed update on an overview of community hiring. There will be the community hiring, a hearing on community hiring on November 13th. And then we have our next hiring hall will be October 30th in Staten Island. So more to come on that. And again, shout out to our friends at SBS for really partnering with us and taking the lead on the execution of the hiring halls. But more importantly, really thinking about how we take all that learning and continue to target our overall talent and workforce services across the city and all of government. To get it really into the neighborhoods and to the people who need it most, and to make sure that every one of the employers in the city has a really strong talent pipeline. So with that, we're going to take a small break, but I really hope as many of you as possible will stay for the Workforce Development Board, which we'll be back here in about 3 minutes. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. That's right. So, of course, we're kind of That's perfect. All right, everybody, particularly those who are on the Workforce Development Board, please take your seats. We have some business to take care of, which includes voting, and I know some folks have to go. We want to make sure we have a quorum. So please take your seats. We'll open up the floor for more socializing afterwards. Thank you, everybody. And again, if you're on the board, please sit down and stay because we need you for some votes. Thank you, everybody. I think I actually have some remarks. Okay, thank you. I want to thank Audria Powell, who has served as a fantastic chair of the Workforce Development Board since 2019. She has done a fantastic job. Where's Audria? In the back corner, getting some food. All right, thank you, Audria. As many of you know, the chair of the board must be a representative of business. They can be at a business or at an industry association. I'm also thrilled that today we're going to have we have one slate on the ballot for two representatives of business who have decided to run together as co-chairs. And those two folks we've worked closely with. One, of course, is Audria. So thank you, Audria, for willing to raise your hand again. Very much appreciative. And it's fantastic also to have representation of such an important sector and folks who are really keeping our economy going and who are keeping many, many people's lives going well. So it's super important that we have you in this role and on this board. So thank you very much. The other is someone who many of us have all worked very closely with. And I will say, personally, I would not be here doing what I'm doing today with this incredible team at NYC Talent and many of you in the room without her support, leadership, and guidance. And I'm thrilled that she has raised her hand willingly and as a volunteer, not under duress. Meryl Pond from the Partnership for New York City has also agreed to put her name on the ballot. I'm going to now turn it over to Chris Neal, who as director of the board will lead you through the election and the rest of the meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks very much, Abby. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Neal. I'm the director of the New York City Workforce Development Board and a senior advisor at the Mayor's Office of Talent and Workforce Development. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to give Meryl and Audria each about a minute to state why they think they would make an effective co-chair. And then afterward, they are running as a slate of two co-chairs. And afterwards, we will have a vote. So we're going alphabetical order by last name. So I will turn it over to Meryl to start.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you. I am nominating myself for the role of chair for the Workforce Development Board. Given the launch of the Workforce Development Council and the increase in private sector engagement, through my role at the partnership, I'm uniquely positioned to represent the private sector voice across many industries. I also have an understanding through my years of working in workforce development and education from the outside of the challenges that government and the nonprofit sector face, as well as the opportunities. So I know that I can balance all three perspectives, providing support to the board staff along the way. So thank you for your consideration.
Good morning, everyone. Audria Powell. All right, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. So I respectfully nominate myself for board co-chair of the New York City Workforce Development Board. I have been an active member of the Workforce Development Board since being appointed in June of 2019. In December 2019, I was elected to the role of board chair shortly before the global pandemic, which was very interesting. Serving as board chair through the pandemic was a fascinating experience since we were all in uncharted territory. Together with the New York City Workforce Development staff, SBS, DYCD, and the board, we focused Our focus centered on maintaining client and employment programs and relationships to support the city during this extraordinarily challenging time. As the president and CEO of Cooperative Home Care Associates, we're a home care cooperative that provides workforce development and training that leads to employment. So I feel like I have a unique, comprehensive perspective of this. We primarily train home health aides and personal care aides. I believe I hold a set of experiences and perspectives and skills that are important to serving as a board member and as a board chair. I am excited to be considered for the role and look forward to continuing to serve should I be elected to another term.
Great. Thank you very much, Meryl, and thank you, Audria. Okay, so those of you who are members of the Workforce Development Board have a vote. If you are not a member of the Workforce Development Board, please do not vote. You know who you are, I think. So we have one slate of two co-chairs, Meryl and Audria, and we're going to have a vote. Every board member in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, congratulations to the new co-chairs of the New York City Workforce Development Board. All right. And we have more board business to conduct. So we're going to keep moving through this rapidly. I know a couple folks have to leave before 10:30. So if we can go to the next slide. We sent out two resolutions that we need the board to consider today. We sent these out over email. They're also in your packets. We did distribute packets during the transition. Did everybody get one? Raise your hand if you did not get a packet. Okay. There's somebody in the audience who didn't get one. Could some of the NYC talent staff? There you go. Great. Look at that. Ask and you shall receive. So there's two resolutions in your packet starting on page 5 in that section. The first one is to transfer WIOA funding, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding, from dislocated worker to adult. What does that mean? This is actually an essential but sort of administrative task that we do every year. We get two pots of funds. We get adult funding, which is for anybody 18 or older. And then there's a subset of adults who are considered dislocated workers. These are individuals who recently lost their job or were notified of an imminent layoff. And we have to categorize those folks as they're enrolling for services. And we have no control over the exact amount of funding we get from each of those pots. There's a federal formula and a state formula that determines that. And so we have to match the type of funding to the type of customer, which means that every year we have to right size those two proportions. So next slide, this next slide will illustrate it a bit more clearly, I think. So the orange is the proportion of dislocated worker money that we get. And this is the proportion of customers that we see. So 49 versus 15%. We get 51% in adult funding, but we see about 85% of customers who fall into the adult category. So WIOA allows local boards to transfer up to 100% from one pot into the other. And we just need to right size this. We need to make sure that our money matches the people. The services available are no different. Nobody's going to miss out on any services. We just have to right size this so that we're using the right kinds of funds to pay for the right kinds of people. Next slide, please. So just to illustrate this, we're saying we want to move 20 million, right? This is our current budget. We have a little over 30 million in adult funding and a little over 29 million in dislocated worker funding. Again, almost a 50-50 split. But we're seeing 85% adult customers. So we want to move 20 million into adult out of the dislocated worker, resulting in about 50.6 million and 9.2 million. And that will right size the money for the proportion of customers that we're seeing. So this is not a super controversial thing. We've done this every year, but certainly want to answer any questions. And I saw him back there.
Good morning, Jessica Johnson, Johnson Security. If this is something that has to happen on a continual basis, would it make sense for members of the board to potentially draft a letter to the federal government suggesting that they make a change to the regulations so that it's not something that we have to perpetually do?
I don't know if it would help because it's in the legislation that this is how the money comes to us. There's a complicated formula based on local economic factors. We can certainly suggest that to the U.S. Department of Labor that's responsible for implementing WIOA. I think a lot of local areas have to do this. So it's as WIOA is being reauthorized, that may be something that they could throw in there that it's a little bit easier to reauthorize. Other questions? Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, so two quick things. Number one, could you be a dislocated worker but be eligible for adult funding under the current funding?
You are one or the other. You're not both. But it doesn't, the services that you have access to are exactly the same. It's just how we categorize you when you come in because we need to count that. And it's sort of the basis of WIOA is to make sure that we are serving at least some dislocated workers in the mix.
I guess I didn't ask the question. Like, if we shift the funding and let's just say in theory we run out of dislocated worker funds, but you would be you get laid off, you're a dislocated worker, would you be able to qualify? Could you still potentially be able to qualify?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nobody is not served as a result of this change.
That's what I meant to say. And then just on this federal recommendation that we should probably not, right? Like we don't want to upset the apple cart if we're getting the funding as it comes now, and we can make this change pretty easily, right? Because we don't want to run the risk of the federal going, oh, you don't need dislocated worker money. So let's just, let's take it off the table.
Noted. Any other questions? Okay, Audrey, do you want to put it to a vote? Finish the bite, finish the bite.
Motion to accept to transfer funds between dislocated and adults.
So moved.
You have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's move to the next slide. So we're trying to get our business done first. The second resolution is to establish a WIOA program monitoring policy. And we learned recently, so just so folks know, some of you saw the WIOA deep dive. We work extremely closely with two city agencies, the New York City Department of Small Business Services, SBS, and the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD for short. They, for many years, have administered the WIOA programs. They know what they're doing. They have all sorts of policies. And so recently it was brought to our attention that the board itself should have a WIOA program monitoring policy. Now, we do lots of program monitoring. SBS and DYCD staff, they have policies that have been fully approved by the New York State Department of Labor. They're fully in compliance with WIOA, but we need to have sort of an umbrella policy that basically states that we recognize and confirm that the policies of SBS and DYCD are okay. And I shared those policies with folks yesterday. They don't make for quick reading, but just know that they have been reviewed by New York State Department of Labor, and we are, they're basically fully in compliance, and we have to have our own guiding policy. And so that's what this basically is. It's basically confirming that what SBS and DYCD do, it has the board's approval. Are there any questions about that? It's not super controversial. Go ahead, Meryl.
Yeah, and the changes that you sent yesterday with
Oh, yes.
fiscal was removed.
Yes.
I was actually concerned about that.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's because there are separate fiscal manuals. I think we will have to bring another fiscal policy back to the board, but for program monitoring itself, we got some feedback from our partners at New York State Department of Labor that fiscal shouldn't be a part of this particular policy, and there will be a separate policy. Now, just to be clear, SBS and DYCD do a whole lot of fiscal monitoring as well and make sure that their contracted organizations are fully in compliance. So we are fully in compliance on the WIOA stuff, and we will look at whether we need to have the board pass a fiscal policy as well. But the program monitoring policy is something that we've needed to have for.
Okay, so just to confirm, understood on the program, understood that this is in alignment with WIOA, but that doesn't mean that the board is not doing fiscal monitoring.
Correct. We're essentially deputizing SBS and DYCD to conduct fiscal monitoring, and we are staying on top of that and getting feedback, especially through the executive committee and the reports from those agencies.
We will still have an aspect of fiscal monitoring. We're not giving up all of the power to DYCD.
Correct. Okay. Correct. I mean, the law gives the board, like, we are responsible for fiscal oversight.
Okay. No, I just want to clarify. That's why I was concerned. That's why I was concerned when I saw fiscal had moved. So
yes. No, I'm glad you raised that. I meant to address that. So thank you for raising that. Tim.
If fiscal is excluded from this, and that's certainly fine with me, what does program monitoring refer to? Is this outcomes of the various programs, placement?
I mean, it's a mix of things. I think it's like the, is the site accessible? Are customers receiving the right kinds of services? Are we entering the data appropriately in the system? Are people achieving the outcomes that we want to see? It's those sorts of things. And fiscal's on a different track.
One quick thing, by the way, quick note. If anyone is talking at the tables, if you can use the mic so that everyone in the room can hear you.
We couldn't hear you, but Dan, you didn't have a mic on. Sorry, I had to. Any other questions about that, Matt?
Given that now we are formally having this oversight policy, do we also have access as needed to the underlying data that is reported?
Absolutely. So on a quarterly basis, one of the things that was pointed out to us is that there are quarterly program monitoring reports done of the various program sites, and those are shared with the chair, now co-chairs of the board, as well as with myself and other stakeholders, and we'd be happy to share those more broadly for folks to look at. Any other questions?
So can I have a motion to accept the WIOA program monitoring?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you very much. We got through the board business, so thank you all for that. Can we go to the next slide? All right. So now I'm going to give a truncated Workforce Development Board Director's report. Go ahead. Next slide. So Audrey alluded to this earlier. We are pleased that the Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD, was able to announce awards to youth providers for its two major WIOA programs, what they call Learn and Earn, which is for in-school youth, and Train and Earn, which is for out-of-school youth. This information is public. As Audrey said before, we're going to send around a couple of the links so that you can see the list of providers. And the provider list is in your packet on pages 10 and 11, a list of all the providers. Just to summarize, for Learn and Earn, that's about $7 million annually. It's for 16 contracts. 14 unique provider organizations won those contracts. So a couple providers won 2 awards. And it's a lot of returning providers. It's 10 returning and 4 new providers. But what's unique about the model going forward is that all of these programs are now going to be based in schools. Previously, some were in schools, some were at the provider organization's location. But this program really targets juniors and seniors in high school. So this is a really important shift, and we're really supportive and appreciative of DYC for making that shift. So that's Learn and Earn. Train and Earn is out of school youth, 21 million annually for 23 different contracts. It's 18 unique provider organizations, so number 1, 2 contracts. And that's a bigger mix of returning and new. So it's 50-50 in terms of who are the new contractors and who are the returning ones. And that's healthy. It's good to get a new mix of folks into the mix. And there's a real emphasis on both career exploration and also hard skills training. And the focus, the RFP solicited proposals in 4 key sectors: healthcare, industrial and infrastructure, tech, media and entertainment, and government. And we love the government one because it's focused on city jobs, and we really want to, foster city as employer and open up the access into city jobs. So this is the update on the DY City Youth Provider. Again, the list is in your packet. This is now up. Thanks, Abby.
That's the battery.
Yeah, these batteries, EDC, Shahila, come on. All right, any questions about that? Meryl, yeah, go ahead.
So there's concern about, and I mentioned this in an email. Oh, sorry. Okay. I mentioned in an email to folks last night about the concern of folks I'm hearing from some of these organizations, the delay in getting these awarded with the start date, but then most importantly, the delay in the funding that will be flowing to the contractees because of all this. And I realize this is part of a much bigger issue. But I do want to state that for the record at the meeting that I'm very concerned about it, given that we are going to be relying on these programs to deliver some of the services that the board is supporting and working on and developing innovative partnerships for. And how can we do that if the money is tied up and the organizations at the end who are doing the work can't do the work? So again, I realize with 5 minutes left, we are not going to solve this problem, but I'm just saying that this is a huge concern of mine and makes me really think hard about, we've got to do something as a board to tackle this.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. Agreed. We, and the city is trying to invest a lot. There's the Mayor's Office of Nonprofit Services. They're trying to do what they can to speed up the process of paying providers, but it is a unique sort of view that the board has on this particular group of contracts, and absolutely we can continue to focus on that. Grace.
Just wondering if it's possible to get Mike.
There we go. You can hear me. I'm wondering if it's possible to get some type of presentation from Mayor's Office of Contracts as to where they are with Passport, because that is the pain point here, so that we can measure outcomes accordingly.
I think it would also, I completely second that idea, because I think it would also be, I'm speaking into it. I also think the green light's on. I think it would also be really important for the Mayor's Office of Contracts to know that the board is actually taking a look at this and is extremely concerned. I understand that we don't necessarily have control over this, but as external parties to this issue, we have a different voice than many of the nonprofit partners and the others that are at the table. So let's get that done sooner rather than later. And aren't you glad you voted me as chair?
Still am, yes. And Grace, to your point, we'll ask Mox and we'll see what we can do. Randy.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, the previous contracts ended June 30th, right? So we've already got a gap. When do we anticipate like program services is going to kick in on these?
So my understanding from DYCD is no later than January 1st. For the returning contractors, the ones that have already done this, the hope is that they can get up and running faster because they've already been doing it. But to your point, there has been a gap in bringing on enrolling new customers because we didn't have the contracts in place. This is something that we are aware of, concerned about, but if these providers can move quickly to enroll the young people, they still have until June 30th to bring them on and get them their services for that first year of programming.
So then either bridge loans or funding advances are going to be necessary, right?
Yeah, probably, depending on the organization and if they're a nonprofit and they qualify.
Yeah, there's a low ability to get those at the moment, so.
All right, well, we will definitely follow up on this promptly because this is obviously a burning issue and I appreciate that the board is raising it. And so we'll figure out the appropriate next step. Thank you. I am cognizant of time. Can you go to the next slide? So just wanted to share, because Audria and all the other committee leads had very little time to speak. And I have very little time to speak, but wanted to just share a couple of the two policies that the executive committee recently reviewed and approved. These are in your packets starting, I think, on page 12. One is the revised local self-sufficiency policy, which did a couple things. It simplifies who's eligible. Basically, an individual who makes $91,000 a year or less is eligible for training. WIOA does require that you set some kind of income cap. And I think it's our belief, and I think the board agreed, or the executive committee agreed, that training should be, there's scarce training resources, they should go to the people that need them most. However, we also recognize that sometimes exceptions might be useful. And so we built into the policy the ability to have limited exceptions, provided that there's a really strong labor market case and that they are limited to no more than 25% of the annual training budget. SBS typically, at least last year, budgeted about 16 million for training. So that would be no more than 4 million in any given year. And the executive committee passed 2 exemptions, one for a respiratory therapist training. We learned during the pandemic that we definitely did not have enough respiratory therapists, and we wanted to invest in building that pipeline. And if those folks make a little bit more than the income cap, they'll still be eligible. That program allows them to be eligible because we think we're helping to build out an area that is of great need in healthcare. And the second one is a nurse educator fellowship. So as Daniel Liss has explained on a number of occasions, we have a huge, crazy nursing shortage. One of the pipeline blockers is not enough nurse educators to train new nurses and to provide ongoing support to existing nurses. And so nurses make a good living, even in New York City, and but we want to experiment with this pipeline because we think it has the potential for real systems change. So those are the 2 exemptions. We will share information after this meeting if folks want a little bit more information. We'll send that out to the board members, but just wanted you to be aware that those were passed and that we have a couple exemptions that were passed. Just checking for time. Okay, we are right at 10:30. I will just end by doing a short shout out to our partner agencies. So this information is in the back of the book. Department of Youth and Community Development, for another year in a row, enrolled more than 100,000 young people in the summer youth employment program across a huge range of employers. Congratulations. And SBS, Small Business Services, completed the year with more than 22,000 job placements and an average wage of nearly $19 an hour, which is really incredible, especially if you know where the system was 10 or 15 years ago with a lot of part-time, entry-level, low-paying retail wages. So congratulations to them on those strong wages. And with that, I'll turn it back to Audrey.
Okay, well, I'm going to close us out. I want to thank everybody for coming to the board meeting and for your participation. And I will take, we don't have a date for the next one yet, right? But you will get it as soon as we have it. And with that, I will take a motion to close the meeting. Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.